Hello, and welcome to the Hidden Archives. I am glad you are here. Today, we are following a spice so small that it can disappear between your fingertips, yet so valuable that for centuries people have called it red gold. Saffron looks delicate, almost weightless, but behind each crimson thread is a chain of biology, timing, chemistry, labor, trade, and trust. In a warm bowl of water, a few strands slowly release a golden orange color, and that quiet transformation raises a simple question: why does so little cost so much? Picture a small glass bowl on a kitchen counter. The water inside is warm, not boiling, just warm enough to wake the spice. A cook drops in a few dry red threads, and for a moment, almost nothing happens. Then color begins to move outward, slowly, like sunlight dissolving in water. The liquid turns yellow, then orange, then a deep golden shade that can perfume rice, broth, sweets, tea, or bread with only a pinch. This is the first mystery of saffron. A handful of threads weighs almost nothing, but it can command a price that makes people pause before buying it. The answer begins with a correction. Saffron is not the whole flower. It is not the petals, not the yellow stamens, and not the bulb beneath the soil. True saffron is the dried red stigmas of Crocus sativus, the saffron crocus. Each flower gives only 3 of them. That is why the phrase red gold is more than a pretty nickname. But it also needs care. Saffron is not always literally more expensive than gold in modern markets. Its value comes from something different, an unusual convergence of scarcity, fragile handling, chemistry, and proof. To understand the price, we have to follow the plant from the field to the jar and notice how every stage resists speed. The saffron crocus is a modest flower, usually purple to lilac in color, with petals that open close to the ground during a short autumn season. Inside the bloom are the yellow stamens, which make pollen, and the 3 red stigmas, which are the part humans prize. They are thin, moist, vivid, and easily damaged. Once dried, those 3 stigmas become the threads sold as saffron. The arithmetic is severe. Agricultural estimates commonly suggest that somewhere around 150,000 to 250,000 flowers may be needed to produce 1 kilogram of dried saffron. The range is wide because saffron is not one perfectly uniform product. Yield changes with cultivar, field conditions, the length of the stigmas, how much yellow style is trimmed away, how much moisture is lost during drying, and what standard the producer is trying to meet. A kilogram sounds like a lot, but in the world of ordinary crops, it is a small harvest. For saffron, it can represent an enormous field of flowers and a mountain of repetitive work. This is the first major cost driver. Each plant gives almost nothing that can be sold as high-quality spice. A field may look generous when it is in bloom, but the useful part is hidden inside each cup-shaped flower, and it must be removed with precision. Saffron begins as a lesson in biological limitation, where abundance in the field turns into scarcity on the scale. Then comes the harvest, and timing becomes everything. The flowering season is short, often concentrated into only a few weeks, and in traditional growing regions, the work can begin before sunrise. Flowers are commonly picked early in the morning, before strong sun exposure, because the bloom is still fresh and easier to handle. University of Vermont guidance for saffron growers recommends picking flowers just as they begin to open. Once the flowers wilt, separating the stigmas becomes harder. Wet flowers can stain, bruise, or invite contamination. sun-damaged flowers can lose some of the quality that later shows up in color and aroma. So the harvest is not a relaxed walk through a field. It is a race against daylight, weather, and decay. Workers move through rows of low flowers, bending again and again, filling baskets with blooms that must be processed quickly. Every hour matters, because saffron is valuable only if the fragile red stigmas remain clean, bright, and chemically alive. A delayed harvest may still produce something red, but quality is not judged by color alone. It depends on aroma, taste, drying behavior, and purity. That is why saffron fields have a particular urgency. The flowers do not wait politely for a convenient workday. When they open, the growers have to be ready, and the whole production chain begins moving at once. Even in an age of satellites, precision irrigation, robotic packing lines, and automated harvesters, saffron remains stubbornly human. The reason is simple to see if you imagine the flower in your hand. The valuable threads are thin and soft. They can break, tangle, stick to other flower parts, or carry tiny bits of petal and pollen. Separating them is not like cutting wheat, shaking nuts from a tree, or pulling fruit from a branch. It is flower by flower work. A harvester or processor opens the bloom and removes the 3 stigmas with practiced care, often keeping them connected at the base, depending on the local style and grade. Precision matters because lower value floral parts can reduce the grade. Yellow styles, petals, stamens, dust, or plant debris may add weight, but they do not add the same quality. In honest trade, that difference affects price. In careless trade, it becomes a pathway to adulteration. Machines struggle because saffron demands judgment at tiny scale. A tool must recognize the right part, grip it gently, avoid contamination, and repeat the action thousands of times without bruising the material. Some mechanization can help in cultivation or handling, but the most valuable step still belongs largely to hands and eyes. Each gram of saffron represents not one big labor event, but thousands of small decisions made under time pressure. The bottleneck begins even before the flower appears. Crocus sativus is a sterile triploid plant, meaning that in normal cultivation, it does not reproduce by seed in the ordinary way. Growers multiply it vegetatively through corms, which are underground storage organs that look a little like bulbs to the casual eye. A corm stores energy, sends up leaves and flowers, and can produce new corms that are later divided and replanted. This creates a slower path to expansion than seed-based farming. With wheat, lettuce, or many herbs, a grower can buy seed and plant a broad area relatively quickly. With saffron, the grower needs living corms, and those corms must be lifted, divided, sorted, stored, and replanted. Each stage carries risk. Diseased corms can spread problems through a field. Poor storage can reduce vigor. Climate matters too, because saffron needs the right balance of seasonal heat, cold, drainage, and moisture. The plant can be hardy, but it is not infinitely flexible. Its flowering window is narrow, and once the flowers arrive, they arrive in a rush. This slow underground multiplication helps explain why saffron production cannot simply expand overnight when prices rise. The crop is physically constrained by the way it reproduces, and that hidden biology beneath the soil shapes the price above it. The story becomes even more interesting when we move from the field into chemistry. Saffron is valuable not only because it is rare, but because it carries a distinctive combination of color, bitterness, and aroma. 3 groups of compounds are especially important: crocins, picrocrocin, and safranal. Crocins are water-soluble pigments, which is why a few threads can color a pot of rice or a bowl of broth so intensely. They are responsible for saffron's yellow-orange coloring strength, the part many cooks notice first. Picrocrocin gives saffron its characteristic bitter taste, a small but important edge that keeps the spice from being merely floral or sweet. Safranal is the volatile molecule most associated with saffron's aroma, that warm, hay-like, honeyed, slightly metallic fragrance that is difficult to imitate well. These compounds are delicate. They are influenced by the health of the flower, the timing of harvest, the way stigmas are separated, the drying method, and storage. So a gram of saffron is not simply plant matter sold by weight. It is chemistry preserved through a fragile chain of handling. If that chain is careless, the threads may still look red, but their coloring power, aroma, and flavor can be weaker. This is why drying is one of the most important steps in saffron production. After harvest, the stigmas must be separated quickly, often within a few hours when possible, and then dried with control. Drying is not just removing water, it is a curing process that changes the chemistry of the spice. During drying and later storage, part of the picrocrocin pool can transform into safranal, helping create the aroma that people associate with high-quality saffron. But the balance is delicate. If the stigmas are not dried enough, they may retain too much moisture, which raises the risk of mold, spoilage, and poor preservation. If the heat is too high or the process is careless, volatile aroma compounds can be damaged and pigment strength can decline. Good post-harvest practice means drying to low moisture, protecting the stigmas from contamination, and storing them away from light, air, and humidity. University of Vermont guidance recommends drying to below 12% water content and keeping saffron in dark, airtight glass. Those details may sound technical, but they are part of the value. The best saffron is not only picked at the right moment, it is cured, protected, and allowed to hold its chemistry until it reaches the cook. Because saffron's value is hidden inside chemistry, appearance can be misleading. A thread that looks beautifully red is not automatically high grade, and a buyer cannot judge every important quality by eye. That is where laboratory testing enters the story. The international standard, known as ISO 3632, grades saffron using spectrophotometric testing. In simple terms, a sample is prepared and a machine measures how it absorbs light at specific wavelengths. Those light readings are connected to the compounds that define saffron quality. Picrocrocin is measured at 257 nanometers, safranal at 330 nanometers, and crocin coloring strength at 440 nanometers. The numbers help show whether the saffron has strong taste, aroma, and coloring power. This matters because saffron is sold in tiny quantities at high prices, and small differences in quality can carry real economic weight. Lab testing also builds trust between producers, exporters, retailers, and buyers, who may be separated by continents. In a perfect world, a spice would speak for itself through scent and flavor. In global trade, especially with a valuable product, trust often needs paperwork, standards, and instruments. Red gold is measured not just by the eye, but by light itself. High value also brings temptation. Saffron is often described as one of the most adulterated spices in the world, and the reason is not mysterious. If a few grams are worth a great deal, dishonest sellers may try to stretch real saffron with cheaper material. Common adulterants include extra floral parts, dyed fibers, exhausted saffron that has already had much of its color or aroma removed, and other plant material made to resemble threads. Sometimes the fraud is obvious once the spice is soaked in water. Sometimes it is subtle enough to fool a casual buyer. Adulteration harms more than the person who overpays. It damages honest growers who invest in careful harvesting and drying. It weakens culinary results because imitation threads cannot deliver the same chemistry. It also makes origin claims and certificates more important in international trade.
A small jar of saffron may carry labels about country, grade, harvest, and testing, because the market needs ways to separate the real from the diluted. Authenticity policing is part of saffron's identity. Like precious metals, it invites verification because the material is valuable, portable, and easy to misrepresent. In the food economy, saffron behaves less like a common seasoning and more like a tiny certified treasure.
Geography adds another layer to the story. Many countries grow saffron, including Spain, India, Greece, Morocco, Afghanistan, Italy, and the United States in small or specialized operations. But Iran remains the dominant center of supply. FAO reporting has described Iran as producing more than 90% of the world's saffron, a remarkable concentration for such a famous global spice. That dominance reflects climate, regional expertise, tradition, labor systems, and generations of knowledge about corms, harvest timing, drying, and trade. It also means the global market is shaped by forces beyond the field. Sanctions, banking restrictions, origin verification, re-export routes, and certification all influence how saffron moves and how it is priced. A buyer in one country may see saffron labeled from another country, even when the supply chain is more complicated underneath. None of this reduces the skill of growers in other regions. It simply shows that saffron's scarcity is geographic as well as biological. Price is not set only by flowers blooming in a field. It is shaped by borders, documentation, trust, and the ability to prove where a tiny red thread came from. Now we can address the famous comparison directly. Is saffron really more expensive than gold? The careful answer is not always, and usually not in the ordinary wholesale or retail sense. As of early June 2026, 24-karat gold was around $144,000 per kilogram. Most wholesale saffron, and much ordinary retail saffron, is generally below that level when priced by the kilogram. But the confusion is understandable. Saffron is usually sold in tiny packages, 1 gram, half a gram, sometimes only a few threads sealed in a vial. When a premium small package has its price extrapolated by weight, the number can look enormous, especially after retail packaging, import costs, branding, and margins are included. The stronger factual claim is that saffron is the world's most expensive culinary spice by weight. The metaphor red gold remains fair because saffron shares some of gold's economic behavior. It is scarce, it is valuable in small quantities, it must be authenticated, it carries cultural prestige. Yet unlike gold, saffron is also perishable, chemically delicate, and tied to a plant that refuses easy industrial scaling. Its price is not a myth. The myth is only in making the comparison too literal. What then does a single gram of saffron really contain? Hold a small jar in your hand, and it may not feel like much. It may weigh less than a coin. But inside that gram is a long, hidden chain. There are corms multiplied slowly underground, lifted and divided by growers who must protect them from disease. There is a narrow flowering season that arrives all at once, forcing workers into the field in the morning. There are flowers picked as they begin to open, before sun, wetness, wilting, or bruising can reduce quality. There are 3 stigmas removed from each flower, again and again, with careful fingers. There is drying that must be strong enough to preserve, but gentle enough to protect aroma and pigment. There is storage in darkness, away from moisture and air. There may be laboratory grading, origin paperwork, and testing to confirm that the threads are not diluted with cheaper material. Saffron's price is not irrational when the chain is visible. It reflects a crop that modern industry has not fully simplified. Every stage asks for patience, attention,
and trust.
That is what makes saffron such a rare food story. Many luxury ingredients become expensive because of fashion, branding, or exclusivity. Saffron certainly has prestige, and it has been prized across cultures for medicine, dye, fragrance, ritual, and cuisine. But its value is also anchored in physical facts that are hard to escape. The plant gives only 3 useful red stigmas. The flowers must be gathered in a short window. The threads must be separated by hand with uncommon precision. The drying process must preserve a delicate chemistry of crocins, picrocrocin, and safranal. The finished spice must be protected from light, moisture, heat, and fraud. In that sense, saffron is not expensive because it is mysterious. It is expensive because the mystery has an answer at every stage, and every answer points to limitation. A few threads can turn water gold because their pigments are powerful. A few threads can cost so much because their path to the bowl is long. And when we taste saffron, we are tasting not only flavor, but the resistance of a flower to being rushed. So, the next time saffron blooms in warm water, pause for a moment before it disappears into rice, stew, tea, or dessert. Those crimson threads carry a story that begins below the soil and ends in chemistry we can smell. They carry the morning labor of people moving quickly through fields, the judgment of hands separating red from yellow, the skill of drying without ruining, and the pressure of a global market that must constantly defend authenticity. Red gold is a metaphor, but it is also a reminder that some forms of value are not created by size. They are created by rarity, care, and time. Saffron is costly because every stage of its life resists speed. It resists fast reproduction, fast harvesting, fast processing, careless drying, easy grading, and simple trust. In a world built to accelerate production, saffron remains an exception, a spice whose value is visible in just a few red threads, and whose hidden archive is written in flowers, labor, science, and history. Thank you for listening to The Hidden Archives. If this episode helped you see an everyday luxury in a new way, please subscribe, like, and share it with someone who loves food history, science, or the hidden labor behind beautiful things. And I would love to hear from you. What ingredient should we uncover next? Until next time, keep looking closely. The smallest things often carry the deepest stories.